Welcome back to another episode of Dad Bod Fantasy Squad. I am here with Robbie Bobby. What's up, dude?
Dude, we are here to tell the listeners what we have coming up. We are here to bring you the best fantasy football personalities from around the NFL to break down each squad for you, the viewers. We want you to win your league, and these are the guests that are going to bring you the insight that no one else will.
So stay tuned. We have 8 of these coming out for you guys, and enjoy the rest of the show. Next up, we have Wyatt Bertolone coming on to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Man, I'm rolling. You can find Wyatt over on Twitter at WyattB_FF. You could see it on his tag right there on spelling. Wyatt is an analyst with JWB Fantasy Football, which you can follow as well on Twitter. That's at JWB_FF. He's also a contributor to DLF Football, which is at DLF Football. It's DLF. OOTB. Yeah, ALL. I almost messed that up as well. What an intro for you, Wyatt. And is the official ranker in that Fantasy Pros ECR. Wyatt, I apologize for me stumbling there. What is going on, man? Thank you so much for stopping by to talk about the Browns.
It's all good. I appreciate it. I'm having a good time already. It's funny. The DLF, I 100% do exactly what you do every time. I go to tag them in a post because I just assume it's DLF football because that's what their thing is. But yeah, it messes me up too.
DL football.
Yeah, DL
football. There you go. I wish I would have said it like that in the intro, but we are too far gone. We already have an edit on this. We're editing it there, and we're leaving this intro. So the Browns, man, we're talking our hometown team. This is all excited. Of us.
I'm excited.
We're all in the area. You're near Akron. Robbie's near Cleveland. I'm Columbus. We are just Brownies until we die, and it's an unfortunate curse, but we all bear it.
Yeah,
and we do it for everybody else.
We know the pain.
It's an unfortunate. We know the pain.
we have a bond over the pain that is the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I've had friends try to be Browns fans, switch teams, and I'm like, no, you're not allowed. You have to put in years of work and pain to be able to say that you're a Browns fan.
Pain and suffering. The inside scars that we all carry are they cut deep, baby. They cut deep.
Yeah.
This is why this is going to be an interesting conversation because we have all trauma bonded for many years together. With some of the departures, we saw Jadeveon Clowney. He's gone. Kareem Hunt is gone. We added some defensive weapons, though. We added Zadarius Smith. We added Dalvin Tomlinson. We added offensive pieces, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Jordan Atkins, who is listed, I think, as a tight end 2 right now. Mm-hmm. So something we ask all our guests to start with, and we'll really find out if Wyatt is an optimistic Browns fan or a realistic Browns fan. What are your expectations? I am an optimistic, by the way. What are your expectations for this team in the upcoming season?
Well, I think the expectations have to be playoffs. Wins and losses, I think that's a little bit tough to say. I think anything 10 wins, 10 wins would be great. I would love it if we hit 10 wins.
I would love 10.
I think that's a reasonable projection, but also one that we should be really happy if we hit. 9 and 8 is probably a disappointment. It's unfortunate because I think 9 and 8 and 10-7, there's a big difference between those two numbers, even though it's only actually one game.
Especially in our division.
Yeah. We're also cursed to be in what has been one of the best divisions in football for many, 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 many years, which is just awful when you're the front office and who can't put teams together properly and draft properly for many years. But things are turning around. It looks like right now we had to sell our soul to the devil to do it. But I think we're in a good place.
We did that for everybody else as well.
Yeah. I think we're in a good place to make the playoffs. Like I said, I think 10 and 7 is a realistic projection.
Yeah, man. And speaking of selling our soul to the devil, let's talk to Deshaun Watson.
What a transition.
Let's talk about Deshaun Watson, and let's strictly keep this to a football perspective. We know all the off the field issues and what's going on outside of the football field, but let's keep this to the football field. Watson has been a top 5 quarterback in every single season that he has played prior to last season. Now, are you kind of contributing that to, obviously, he had pretty much a year and a half off, and he just coming in rusty, that kind of stuff, learning a new offensive scheme, trying to figure out his weapons on the fly. So let me know what you think about that, and how do you project him this season?
I do think it's a large portion that was rust. I don't think it can be ever stated enough how much being away from football can affect a player, because everything that we talk about, like when players transition to the NFL, is the speed of the game, right? Like you get used to that from reps. Well, he didn't have any of those reps for a long time. Like it's going to take time to get up to speed. I also think it's really important, and this is a factor I think gets mentioned enough, is that the Browns had to craft an offense around Jacoby Brissett and then Deshaun Watson play within that offense, because they couldn't. Number one, you can't have 2 offensive game plans set out, that you're practicing throughout the year. And they had to have a game plan for Brissett specifically because he's the one starting the season, and they needed to get off to a good start because they were hoping to hit the playoffs, all those things. So I think this year, all the reports are they're going to be more pass heavy, building around what Deshaun Watson does best. And I'm like really hopeful at this point. Like you said, every time he's been on the field when practicing and being in training camp and all those things, been top 5. There's no reason to think he can't do it again. I think he's going to have a harder time doing it than he did in the past, just because like there are quarterbacks who have emerged since the last time he's doing it. It's a little bit more defined, that top 5. Like it's hard to put him over anybody who would be in anybody other's rankings top 5 right now, but he could do it again. But still, with that said, like I think he's pretty solidly top 10, and for me it's top 8 really. Yeah,
I'm right there with you, and I think a big part of Watson kind of getting into that top 8 category is going to be Amari Cooper. Now, Amari did kind of what Amari does year in and year out. He put up 14.5 PPR fantasy points per game, and he finishes wide receiver 17. He's usually in between that 13 and 15 points per game. 7 of his 8 seasons, he's basically been between wide receiver 14 and 25. Now, do you think that he can take another step forward with a full season with Deshaun Watson and finally crack that top 12?
I can't say with much confidence that he could crack top 12. Just based on his history, I think his ceiling really is like high-end wide receiver 2. I would say that he's been in as good of situations as this, if not better, in his past, and he hasn't hit that mark ever. In points per game, I should say. Total points over a year, yes, but like obviously we know that points per game is more indicative of what they've really done. So no, I can't really say with confidence. I mean, if the Browns become a really pass-heavy team, like we're not expecting, like 60% of the time they're throwing the ball and they're really high, pace, plays per game and stuff, then maybe it is. But I just wouldn't have any confidence saying that he could be. To me, he's more mid wide receiver 2 to high end wide receiver 2.
I kind of feel on that, and I don't know what it is, but I've always kind of had that little bit concerning feels of Amari Cooper, because I feel like we've been burned so many times. I think
he disappears, right? He has stretches where he disappears. I don't think that ever goes away, and I think that's what stops him from being there.
And as a player, though, and I'm purely talking like fantasy, because as a player, he's a wide receiver that I'm happy the Browns have. I think his mentality is great. I think he goes out and does the work, and he usually plays through pain. But for fantasy, it sometimes can be a little tough when he's dealing with some of these injuries. We also have, like as I mentioned at the start of this, we have some additions of some new wide receivers. We have Elijah Moore, who was a 2nd-round pick 2 years ago in the 2021 draft. And Cedric Tillman, who we took in the 3rd round, had a big year in Tennessee. Does that sort of nuke any excitement that people have for DPJ for this year specifically? I personally think it nukes it after this season, but for this year, does that nuke it at all?
Yeah, I mostly agree with what you said. And it depends on what your expectations are, obviously. I don't think we're going to get DPJ like what he did last year, where he was involved a pretty good amount. Like DPJ had a season where I don't think people realized how good it really was. If he had a couple more touchdowns, he would have been actually a pretty good fantasy finish for what expectations were. Elijah Moore definitely hurts him, I would say. Really good prospect coming into the NFL, was really highly thought of, showed big flashes as a rookie. Then last year
was in some weird doghouse.
Yeah, some attitude things, which is never a good sign. It's not a good thing that happened. Even if we say well, he's in a new spot now, so that won't go, that won't happen that way anymore. It still could, still absolutely could. He showed it once, so not saying it won't happen again. I mean, I'm a little bit optimistic that now that he no longer has to play with Zach Wilson. Like, I think, that might have been part of the issue because doesn't seem like anybody wanted to play with Zach Wilson. That he could get things, turned around here in Cleveland. I think that's what hurts DPJ the most, because I think, like, clearly better wide receiver to me, Elijah Moore is, and he would just knock DPJ down the pecking order. Mario, I think I think Tillman is like a succession plan for DPJ.
I swear to God, I've without saying succession plan, I have said the exact same thing, but succession plan is the perfect way to phrase it. It's the prototypical, like, he's the same size as DPJ. He kind of has the same speed as him. And what you said is all making sense. Like, DPJ might get relegated to more of a deep threat. And it's weird because the Browns have kind of always used him that way. Yeah. But now it's like there's no real true reason for them not to. They have Elijah Moore coming across the middle, or Elijah Moore going to the outs, while DPJ, I bet you, is going to be a big downfield threat. Considering ADP, do you prefer Cooper, who goes wide receiver 17, which is 34, Elijah Moore, who goes wide receiver 44, that's 87, DPJ, who goes wide receiver 70, 159, or Tillman, who goes 215, probably undrafted, wide receiver 102? Do you have any preferences between using the ADPs as a standpoint?
I've drafted the most Elijah Moore to this point. I think he can outperform his ADP the most. I like Amari Cooper's ADP. Like, I think it's correct. But he's also around a lot of good players, and he doesn't really have a lot of area to really smash on that ADP. Like, I think he could be a good pick as ADP, but you're going to get about that ADP's worth of production. Whereas Elijah Moore could be a top 20 wide receiver this year. I don't think that should be a surprise if that happens. And he's down the ladder a good bit.
Yeah, man. And, speaking of some of those other weapons that you're talking about, let's bring up David Njoku. He finished last year at tight end 8. It was probably his best season as a Cleveland Brown in the NFL. I kind of have a two-part question for you here. Do you think he's properly priced at tight end 9? That's where he's going off the boards right now. And what are your expectations for him for this season?
I do think he is properly priced. There's a lot of encouraging things to what David Njoku did last year, which I think we needed to see, because his tenure with the Browns has been pretty up and down. It is. His second year, he was pretty good, and then he got hurt, and then he was just inconsistent after that. And then he got the big contract, and it was I don't know, there's potential there, obviously, but we hadn't really seen it come to fruition. And then last year, I think we really did. I mean, there was a time, through the first 6 weeks of the year where he was a top 5 tight end, points per game, and then he got that, I believe it was a high ankle sprain.
Yep.
That kind of slowed him down after that. 18.6% target share is really good for a tight end. He was the second target on the team last year. That could stay that way. It might become Elijah Moore. I think they're going to be similar in targets this year. Mm-hmm. But then he was also second in red zone targets. He was 8th in deep targets. So he's being used in ways that we want him to be used. The question really for how to value him and why I think he's valued priced appropriately is because how much are the Browns actually going to pass? Because there is more target competition this year, but we expect them to pass more. So those things kind of even out a little bit. So that's why I think he's priced properly, but he could go either way fairly easily. If he runs hot in the red zone, which, as I just mentioned, he was second red zone targets last year at tight end. He could easily have a top 5 season if he just runs hot there. We've seen that before, right? Where tight ends,
Ebron.
Yeah, we've seen it before. It doesn't even have to be as good. Ebron had 14. It doesn't even have to
disgusting.
be that good. He catches 8-9 touchdowns just on the normal targets he gets. He's going to be a top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I think that's there's part of me always just wonders if he doesn't have, in these seasons where we've seen the upside, it's always an injury that kind of collapses and brings those inconsistencies outside of the QB issues. He's always been an exciting player, and I was kind of shocked with the money that we paid him. But switching over, because we also paid this guy not too long ago, Nick Chubb. He's been long considered one of the best RBs in the NFL and he's been great for fantasy. I don't think he's finished points per game wise outside of top 12 maybe his rookie year. But he's also never finished top 5 at the position. With Kareem Hunt gone, is this the year that Chubb finishes top 5?
Man, it's tough because he is my RB4 right now, but I feel weird saying top 5. But I think he's really RB4 for me right now because of the state of the running back landscape as it is. With what's going on with Jonathan Taylor, it's hard to have him above Chubb. What's with going on with Josh Jacobs? He wasn't above Chubb, and now you're definitely not going to do it, even if you knew things were going to be good. Breece Hall coming back from the injury, otherwise he would have been. Derrick Henry has fallen back now, but that's because is he still going to be Derrick Henry? We don't, there's enough things going on that you kind of just end up continually pushing up
everyone else
your rankings.
Pushed below.
And really it's just because of the range outcomes. And that's why he's always ranked pretty high, and why he's always ranked pretty high for me is just because he might have a tough time being top 5. He may never have an RB1 season overall. I think it's fair to say at this point that's not going to happen. But we know he's going to be RB6 to 9. It's just consistent. Pretty nice to lock that in, right? There is the chance, that everyone and their mother at this point has tweeted about that with Kareem Hunt gone, he could have more targets. I think it's an absolute possibility. The year that Hunt joined the team in the first 8 games before Hunt was there, it's the highest amount of targets that Chubb has had in a season because he was used as such in those first 8 games. That was a different coaching staff too. So
that was really the year with Monken, right? Was that 2019? So. I think so.
Yeah. So it's really hard to say if he's actually going to get that. I don't I think he will take a smidgen of it. The question is, will oh my God, the backup running back's name now. If he'll get any bit of that work, and how much Deshaun Watson will actually pass to his running backs, because he is a running quarterback, which we know that they don't pass to their running backs as much. So Nick Chubb could have a higher target share than he's used to in this offense and still not really have an increase in overall targets.
Yeah.
So it's hard to project.
Yeah. Now, Wyatt, you said you have Chubb around your RB4, RB5 in that range. So where do you find yourself comfortable enough to draft him? We know what's going on with the wide receiver ADP, the quarterback ADP is they're all getting pushed up. Now, are you comfortable taking him at that 1-2 turn, or where are you finding yourself drafting Nick Chubb this season?
I can't do the 1-2 turn. I can't do it because then you're putting him over some of the wide receivers that I really like at the top of the draft. If you're taking him at the 1-2 turn, you're you have to take him ahead of some amount of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb. There's just too many wide receivers there that I'm much more confident in their points per game that for me to go that high. But once you get into the middle of the second round, where that tier kind of falls off, then it becomes a little bit different for me.
I like that. Go ahead.
Real quick, I just wanted to say and now I know in fantasy we have expanded our reach, but I guess I'm going to speak for myself here. I have a ton of home leagues as well. Chubb never makes it to the mid-second. None of these Browns players ever do. It's so funny how that can be a geographical
You got
difference. Yeah, dude, I need my coffee, dude. I'm without my coffee. Yeah. So I just find that interesting.
Yeah, it is funny. It absolutely works that way.
Yeah, for sure. And you did bring up Jerome Ford. It's somebody I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit. Are you comfortable drafting him this year in the late rounds, obviously, to stash on your bench and see if there's any upside with that play? Like you said, he could kind of take over that Kareem Hunt sort of role.
Yeah, I mean, I do like drafting him. It's just, what is the actual price? Because, so on Underdog, he started out in the 20th round early in the offseason, and he's just kind of slowly been climbing ever since then as the Browns haven't added anyone. But I would caution that they still could. And there's no guarantee that Jerome Ford is the actual backup to Nick Chubb. He could fail at that job. We don't have any data, basically, on Jerome Ford in the NFL. So while I think he will be, I'm just saying, let's be careful about drafting him like a premier handcuff, because we don't know for sure that is what's happening. If a few more weeks go by, it's preseason and it's very clear. I mean, we'll have this first game Right now, we're recording this on Wednesday. Tomorrow is the first preseason game with the Browns. I imagine Jerome Ford's going to play at least a little bit in that game. But I think we'll have an idea in the next couple of weeks, really, if he's for sure the handcuff. And then his price will be okay.
Even higher. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sure. I'm sure it will go up more, too.
Yeah. I like that. And now one question I ask every one of our guests that we're doing this with: who are your plant the flag players this season? Who do you find yourself going out and getting in every draft, regardless of team? Like, who are the guys that you're going out and getting?
Okay, I'll give a couple, and I'll try and go like through the draft. So like one early on is DK Metcalf.
Yeah, baby.
That's
a good one.
Just it's hard to look at his profile in the NFL, what he's done. And look at how he barely scored 8 touchdowns on his targets last year in red zone opportunities, how he's a prime touchdown regression candidate. I'm going to follow this up with also saying that Geno Smith is another one of them, because I'm way into just that offense in general. And Geno Smith, I don't think anything about what he did last year was fluky. First in completion percentage over expected. He was high in EPA per play. If you could say, look at the film, bro, and he was like, you look at it and everything he was doing looked real. He was making very, 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 very good throws. They added the best wide receiver in the draft. They added a better pass catching running back. Like, I'm expecting big things for that offense. Also, another year under the offensive coordinator who came from the Rams system, 3 wide receiver sets, high pass percentage and pace of play, like all these things. And then going deeper in the draft, I can't stop drafting Chuba Hubbard and Leonard Fournette as these late running backs who I think have some roles. One is that Miles Sanders, I think, has been overrated for most of his career. Is a way different situation.
So much pain right now.
The way different situation than he was in last year, where basically Jalen Hurts just told him which direction to run as the offensive line opened up a hole for him, and he could just run in the end zone. I don't buy anything about him getting the extra targets this year. He has shown that he does not earn them anymore. Chuba Hubbard, meanwhile, came into the NFL, not really much of a pass catching back, but has actually earned some targets in his playing time. And Frank Reich has always run an offense that's kind of featured 2 running backs if you look back through that. So I expect Chuba Hubbard to have a little bit of a role, and also just that I think he's one of the best handcuffs you could have because of who Miles Sanders is. And then Fournette, it's basically he's my favorite of the old washed up running backs who's still a free agent who will probably sign somewhere and have a role. I think he probably has like the most left out of like him, Hunt, and Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
Like Dalvin Cook doesn't fall in that
he doesn't,
for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Leonard Fournette goes in the 190s on an underdog, and like he's still not coming up no matter how many times he goes in interviews with a team. I think it's just like the easiest way to get a player who could have like weekly value.
Yeah, I'm shocked he's not a Patriot yet. My mind is blown that he's not a Patriot yet.
I mean, honestly, all of them might just be waiting until like training camp is officially over.
I think that's what's happening. I think
they don't want to practice.
Sure they have ideas of what's going on. They just don't, they're not pulling the trigger yet.
They don't want to. All of them could step into any offense and play. Like, they're not going to have an issue with that. They don't want to practice.
Yeah.
Which
makes a lot of sense.
Big
respect. Wyatt, man, we appreciate you so much for coming on. It's good to see your face. We got to see you last year at the Expo. We're going to miss it this year, so it's really good to see you. Before we let you go, can you let the people know where they can find you? And if you have anything coming up, I know we plugged it at the top, but please plug away and plug again.
Appreciate you guys for having me on. It was good to see you again. We had fun last year at Scott Fishbowl Live Draft, and then also the Expo. So it was nice meeting you guys. So I'm glad we did this. For me, you mentioned at the top, really on Twitter, YP_FF. Almost all my content is through JWB Fantasy Football, which is really the best place to find my stuff. Right now, we're getting hard into the redraft stuff. We've been pounding in the Dynasty content all off season, but it's time to turn the switch. It's almost point scoring season, so we're really getting into the redraft content now. So check it out.
Go follow Wyatt and go check out his other site, JWB. He is killing. He's one of my favorite people in the fantasy football world. So follow this dude.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Thank you.
Next up, we have my buddy Will Tighe coming in to talk some Cincinnati Bengals for us. Will is the co-owner of Better Fantasy, a member of the FSGA and FSWA, which is some awesome stuff to be a part of. You can find his content on Twitter at Will Tighe WILLTIGHEFF. That's WILLTIGHEFF. Will, what's up, buddy? How you been, man?
I've been electric, Rob, and
know.
even better now to be on with you talking football. When everybody started reporting to camp like this week and last week, it's just like the excitement level just rockets up. It's unbelievable. Football is back, man.
It's back, baby. We're doing some mock drafts this week. Like me and the guys at the Dad Bod, we're doing a bunch of mock drafts for the podcast, and we've been having a ton of fun, man. It just feels like it's back. We're ready to roll. We're seeing some players, like we were talking off camera, like let's get the hype from those training camp videos. Let's see who the people are. Like, who is tearing it up? I'm loving it. Like JSN, dude, he's killing it over there. Like, why not pump these guys up right now?
I'm all in on it.
So we are here to talk some Cincinnati Bengals with Will. Couple key departures: Hayden Hurst and Samaje Perine. Yeah, they're key. Some good players, but nothing too serious. They did add their left tackle Orlando Brown, and then they bring in Irv Smith to replace Hayden Hurst. What's kind of your outlook for this team moving forward this season? Do you see them taking a step forward? I mean, they always have Super Bowl expectations with Joey B there. Where do you see them finishing this year?
Well, I mean, Rob, look, quite timely for us to be doing this podcast the day after Joe Burrow's unfortunate calf injury.
Yeah.
That's going to be the main question, man. Like, if he's okay, there's no reason to project anything less than what they've been over the past couple of years. If he's not, obviously, Trevor Siemian, I think, is backing him up. That changes things in a big way. So let's just go into this, assuming that Joe Burrow is going to be a little bit hampered for those first couple of weeks, but generally okay. Yeah. I don't see any reason to project anything less than 11-6. I think that's a very conservative sort of projection for them. I think they're going to be a solid team again, obviously on offense, a good team on defense. I think they're going to be a really solid team as well for fantasy, of course. And so I'm projecting a pretty similar year for the Bengals, assuming Burrow's calf injury is something he can come back from relatively quickly.
Yeah, it was scary seeing how that, those non-contact injuries are super scary. Like, you don't know. When he went down, there was so much stuff. It could have been an Achilles. Is it a calf? He had that sleeve on his calf. They came out, said it was a calf strain. So I'm with you. I mean, they suck. It can kind of hamper him going up into the season. He might get off to a little bit of a slow start, but that's nothing that we haven't seen the past 2 seasons from Joe Burrow, coming off the ACL and the appendectomy last season. So like you said, dude, it's kind of rinse repeat with the Bengals this season. Speaking of Joey Burrow, as a Browns fan, I hate that they had to suck the season that Joe Burrow was coming out the number 1 overall pick. One of the best players. I was super into him when he was at Ohio State. I loved him. He's an undeniable superstar. Now, the one thing with Joe Burrow for fantasy, right? He doesn't get those rushing yards. That's kind of his hamper to get him into that 1 to 2. We're talking, the top 3 guys. What does he need to do this season to catapult himself into that category with Patty Mahomes, with Josh Allen, with Jalen Hurts now?
Yeah, I mean, look, Rob, it's really simple. He has to throw 50 touchdowns, just because that rushing isn't there. And now with the calf injury, it's even less likely to be there. So it's just going to have to be one of those things where he has an outlier season. He throws for 50 touchdowns. He throws for, obviously a ton of yardage. Keeps the interceptions low, keeps everything else in check. But that's what it's going to take for him to be in that top 3 conversation. He's going to have to play like Patrick Mahomes. He's going to have to put up those kind of numbers, because when you're giving up so much on the rushing production side of things, you're going to have to really overproduce on the passing side of things. So that's what it's going to take for him to be in that top 3.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. The outlier touchdown season of 50 plus. And he's got to, pretty much win the MVP. He needs the passing stats to win him an overall MVP. Can he do it? I think, yeah. I think Joey Burrow is that type of player. He's got the weapons with him. Talking of the weapons, we can't talk Joey B without that 1-2 punch of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Chase has been unreal since he's come out of LSU. We all know what's going on. What are your expectations with his 3rd season coming up? And do you see a step forward? I mean, I know it's hard to even imagine that, but can he surpass JJ as the number 1 overall receiver this season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at just last year alone, tremendous production, of course, in the games that he played. The injuries where of course the I think it was a hamstring that he had last year that sort of tapered off his production midway through the year. But when he came back, he was right back to it. Arguably the most talented wide receiver in the league already, up there with the likes of Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson. I think if he didn't have, folks like T. Higgins running opposite him, he would be the number one pick. I don't see why he's any less talented than Justin Jefferson. I think they're on the same playing field there. He just has to compete with T. Higgins for looks, but he's on a better offense than, some of these other guys are. I think it could absolutely, this time next year, Rob, I think we could be looking at Jamar Chase as the 101. And honestly, dude, if somebody took him 101 this year, I wouldn't blame him. He's going to be sick. Like, let's just lock it in, lock in the targets. He had this. I think he had the most red zone targets last year on a per game basis among any wide receiver. He had 2 red zone targets per game. That's insane. 2 red zone targets. I mean, that's incredible. He's just one of these guys that's going to be so solid. He's going to be so safe. He can go off for 50 points every week, and it wouldn't be surprising. Just lock in Jamar Chase. Be happy you took him and move on to the second round.
Yeah, dude, 100%. Like you said, I think there was a lot of shift. There was a lot of shift coming in the past month or so, saying, why are we not talking about Jamar Chase as the 101 over JJ? Like, it makes a lot of sense when you step back, look at the stats, say, damn, like this dude really can be the number 1 player in fantasy. Now, like you said, this Joey Burrow news coming out with the calf injury, it makes it a little bit more concerning taking him at the 101 this season. Because you don't, like, those first couple weeks might be tough if Trevor Siemian's in there. You brought up T. Higgins, another the Robin to Chase's Batman. I think that they are arguably the best wide receiver duo in the league. Now, he hasn't had over 110 targets in a season, and that's mostly due to injuries. Are you comfortable taking him at his ADP? He's going, like the 4th, 5th round, somewhere around there, with those injury concerns and with Jamar Chase on the opposite side of him.
T. Higgins in the 4th or 5th round, I'm smashing draft every time there. I've been doing a lot of drafts recently as part of the FSGA, and T. Higgins is going in those in roughly the 2nd or 3rd. And so I think people are sort of seeing him as that super reliable guy that you can get and just lock in, production. He's had over 900 receiving yards in each of his first 3 years in the league. Like, this guy is just so safe. Obviously the upside is capped a little bit because Jamar Chase is there. And so that's going to, Chase is just going to pull targets away from Higgins naturally. He's just that good of a player. But in the 4th or 5th round, I'm absolutely taking T. Higgins. He's in my top 12 wide receivers this year comfortably. Absolutely taking him there.
Now, is that I had this conversation with a couple of guys with the Dad Bods that have him in top 12. Now, is that top 12 based off of points per game projections or overall season projections?
Overall season projections, I guess. I don't do projections personally, Rob, just because I'm not good enough at math to do all that. And frankly, I don't want to. The way that I look at player analysis is really from a talent perspective and trying to do my best to project the overall viability of the offense. So T. Higgins is a guy, I love his talent. I think he's a great player. And then there's no reason to project anything less from the Bengals offense this year, assuming that Joe Burrow's calf injury is okay, is nothing too substantial. So that's sort of my process. I look at him as a player, and then I look at the offense that he's tied to. I see both are well above league average, and so he's an easy draft for me. In the late 2nd, early 3rd, that's where I feel comfortable taking T.
I love that. I'm with you. I think T's one of those rare wide receiver 2s that can put up wide receiver 1 type of numbers. He's an awesome player. But let's move on to the tight end position, right? We have Irv Smith there coming in for Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst, they really haven't utilized their tight ends too much since they have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, since Joey B's then been there. It's been kind of those guys on the outside using the running back a little bit in the pass game. Do you think Irv Smith can come in and be fantasy relevant? Can he be a top 12 type of tight end, or are we just kind of fading him, not really thinking about it?
Look, I think if the question is, can he, absolutely, because he's tied to this Bengals offense. Is it likely to happen? I would say no, just because he's going to be realistically the 4th option in that offense from a receiving perspective, maybe even the 5th if Joe Mixon gets more work in the passing game. Tyler Boyd's still there. Obviously, we just talked about the other two receivers, so I'm not expecting anything from Irv. But if you want to take him, as a late round flyer in your drafts, say you punt on tight end and you have to gobble up like 3 or 4 guys that you feel can be potential contributors. Sure, Irv Smith definitely has a path to being fantasy relevant this year, but I'm not expecting it to happen.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. He's a tough. It sucks because I've always liked Irv Smith. He's always been one of my guys that I root for. I think that the talent is there, that he could be somebody really good, but it just seems like it doesn't ever come together for him. And I don't see it coming together in this offense as well. There's too many weapons, and just not going to happen.
And real quick, Rob, I'm not a fan of, and I try not to use the argument that there's too many mouths to feed. But in this case, there are 3 well-established wide receivers that the quarterback likes, and I don't think Irv Smith's talent is going to demand targets in the same way that T. Higgins demands targets, even though Jamar Chase is also there.
That's a great way to put it. He's not going to demand it. You have to have the talent to demand the receptions, and when you're not, up at par with those other 2 guys, like, you're going to get what you get, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. Moving on to some Joe Mixon talk. You brought him up. We know what's going on with the off the field stuff. There's a lot of issues surrounding him. There might be a suspension coming. We don't really know what's going to happen with that yet. He did take a pay cut to stay a part of, this high powered offense. It makes a lot of sense. We know what's going on with the RB market. They might have said, hey, you're going to take this cut, or you can go see what you're going to get elsewhere. And he took the pay cut. So are you comfortable taking him, where he's going in drafts? I think the concerns are kind of baked into his ADP where he's going. What's kind of your outlook for him for this season?
I'm all in on Joe Mixon. And this might be the great fallacy of my preseason analysis, Rob, that I am all in on Joe Mixon because, I think people can point to some dips in efficiency metrics on a per touch basis. He hasn't been great, but I don't think that's been a product of him as a player. I think that's been a product of their offensive line issues. Adding Orlando Brown is huge for them. He was the highest paid left tackle free agent acquisition. I think they paid him $65 million over 4 years. So he's going to bolster. He should bolster that offensive line. We'll see. But Mixon, the thing that separated Mixon for me last year was his involvement in the receiving game. He saw career high receiving usage last year, 60 receptions, 441 yards receiving, and 70 targets. I think Joe Mixon is just one of these special elite players at the running back spot. Get him in the high-powered offense. Dude, I'm getting him in the 3rd round. If Joe Mixon's there in the 3rd round, I'm picking at the 305. I'm picking Joe Mixon every time. He's probably the player that I've drafted the most this year.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't argue against it. There's something with it where I'm with you. There's a lot of those weird, funky stats, right, that show he's been declining in efficiency over the past few seasons. Now with Samaje Perine not being there, you would expect his pass work to increase. Mm-hmm. He's a tricky one for me this season for whatever reason. He's one of those guys where I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm believing it, but I get where you're coming from. He's an easy play at that late, where he's going. He's proven that he can outproduce that, and I'm with you. I think that he is somewhat of a safe bet where he's going in the drafts. Yeah,
I think round 3 is pretty reasonable price. I see it as a buying opportunity. If some people don't, I'm not going to argue because, last year, if you take out his crazy 50-point game, he wasn't awesome for fantasy. You didn't love starting him each week. So I totally get that other side of the argument, but I just think in the 3rd round, we're not necessarily looking for the safest players at that point anymore because hypothetically and theoretically, you should have drafted pretty safe guys in the first 2 rounds. And so round 3 is where I personally like to start taking some upside swings. And I think Joe Mixon has a path to being the RB1 overall in fantasy this year. And I don't think guys like Najee Harris or those kind of guys have that same upside. And so I'm drafting Mixon everywhere this year.
Bold take, Will. I love it. So is there anyone else on this offense that we have not talked about that you're interested in for fantasy?
I think Chase Brown, as the handcuff, just because he's, as Bob Harris likes to say, a free square player, right? He's not going anywhere that there's a real opportunity cost at his current ADP. So Chase Brown is pretty interesting to me. Look, Samaje Perine had a decent role last year as the third down receiving back. And if Chase Brown can fill that role, then there's definitely some interest for him standalone. And then if something were to happen to Joe Mixon, I think Chase Brown would fill that role pretty well. And so Chase Brown is definitely somebody that I'm also interested on the Bengals.
Yeah, I love that call, man. That's a great pick for that guy. I'm with you. I think there's a lot of potential upside that you can get with him going super late in your drafts. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a free play, like you said. The upside's there if something happens with Mixon. And again, he's going to be attached to this high-powered offense. Now, one last question I ask every one of my guests before we let them go. Who are your plant the flag players this season in fantasy overall? Any team? Who are the guys you're going out and getting?
Well, Joe Mixon would be, I think, my answer. Although we talked about him ad nauseum there. I'm going to go with Keenan Allen, another guy in the third round, sometimes the fourth round that I'm getting everywhere, Rob. Like Keenan Allen is just such a great player. And I don't think the way that he plays is necessarily going to be impacted by his age. He's a technician, right? He's a guy that wins. He's like Travis Kelce. He understands how to get open, man. And so for a talented player like Keenan Allen to be tied to this Kellen Moore offense now that might even pass the ball more than they have been, a great young quarterback, Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen's a guy that I've been drafting everywhere. And he's a sneaky buy low as well in Dynasty for me. I think if you can sort of make the sell to the Keenan Allen, the person who has Keenan Allen on their team in Dynasty, if you can say, like, yeah, look, he's 31 years old. He's, how many more years does he have left? If you can trade a nominal draft pick for him, maybe like a third rounder or something. Maybe that's an unrealistic ask, but maybe I think Keenan Allen's a good buy low in Dynasty as well.
I think you are 100% correct. He's a player that I've actively been trying to get in Dynasty leagues, and somebody that I'm actively trying to draft this season. I mean, he was a top 10 wide receiver when he came back from that injury last season in the back half of the season. I think over the last 5 weeks or so, he was really, really good. And he demands, like you said, he's so good that he demands that target share upwards in the 25 to 30% range. People sleep on him just because of what happened last year. I'm with you. I think he has one of those outside shots of being a top 12 wide receiver again this season in fantasy.
100%. Let me pull up one Keenan Allen fact real quick. We posted it on our Instagram a couple weeks ago. But after returning from injury, Keenan Allen was the wide receiver 3 from weeks 11 to 18.
There you go.
That's all you need to know.
I mean, why is that unrealistic to think it's going to happen again?
100%.
Will, man, thank you so much for coming on, talking some Cincinnati Bengals with us. We appreciate you. You're one of my favorite people in this industry. Before we let you go, let all the people listening, let them know where they can find you and what's going on.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you, Rob, for having me on. I love the Dad Bod Fantasy Squad, what you guys are doing. I remember when we were at the Scott Fishbowl live draft last year in Canton, it was just kind of like we just kind of hung out and broed out a little bit and have since become good friends outside of the industry as well, which is great. Everybody can find me on Twitter at WillTieFF. You can follow us at Better Fantasy, both on Twitter and Instagram. That's pretty much it. Like if anybody would be interested in beta testing our app for us, feel free to reach out to me through the DMs on Twitter or IG or anything like that. And that's all I have to plug. Really appreciate it, Rob.
Thanks, Will.
All right, next up we have Hutchinson Brown, a young star in the making in the fantasy football world. He has a ton going on. You can find him on Twitter at HutchinsonB_FF. That's HUTCHINSONB_FF. He has 2 awesome podcasts, Hooked on Fantasy. We were just talking about it in the pre-show with Luke Sawhook, and Into the Minds of 2 Idiots pod with his buddy Grayson.
I love that out. That's awesome. But yeah, I love that. I did not think I could shout it out.
You can find some of his fantasy work over at Football Guys and DLF. Hutch, thank you so much for joining us, man. How are you going? How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you guys for having me. I did not expect the 2 idiots shout out. But yeah, me and my school buddy Grace, we've been friends forever. We host a comedy pod together. So it's just something that me and him have wanted to do for a while, but we started up like over the past 5-6 months. It's been really fun. I did not think that I'd get a shout out. I don't talk about it that much on my Twitter account, but That was really shocking. But yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me on the show. I love it. I love this already.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. I know I'm going to say this on the recording because I just think it's so cool. Like you doing what you're doing, knowing your passion, dude. It's amazing. It really is. Like it's just cool. And that you have like a whole nother show that you're just like, well, here's an outlet for comedy. And think about that. Like that works into your fantasy. You're
100%.
starting to build comedy chops and your fantasy analysis, dude. That's combo. That is a hell of a combo, dude.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
For sure. We're going to talk a little bit about, we brought him on to talk a little bit about the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to get a couple of pieces from you, kind of seeing what their season's going to be, obviously all with relation to fantasy football. So let's talk first about some of the key departures. They lost their left guard, Ben Powers, this season. More specifically, like the major ones, obviously. Some of their biggest key additions, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, Melvin Gordon, and then Todd Monken as OC. That's a huge addition for us.
It's huge, yeah.
So like, what's your gut feeling and expectations for this team in the 2023 season?
I'm really excited for this team. This is a team that is very polarizing for this season. Some people like this is a year where Lamar Jackson can really like take it to the next level this year, and I'm all for it. I think there's a really good chance they win this division, even over Cincinnati, that we know is a legit Super contender. I think that's a realistic world where they beat out the Cincinnati Bengals and win this division. I mean, Todd Monken, we know he's come from pass-heavy offenses. Every offense he's ever really worked with has been a pass-first offense, and I think watching Lamar play, looking at his numbers, I think he has the capability in him to throw for 3,900, 4,000 yards. I think that's a capability he has, but we just haven't seen it unlocked yet because the Ravens offense has been primarily a pretty slow run-first offense. They've been winning a lot of games, and they just haven't been able to throw the ball a ton, and especially with their receiving core that they've had. But now with Mark Andrews, with a really talented rookie, Zay Flowers, and then a couple nice guys in Rashad Bateman and OBJ that could make an impact this year, there's a lot of opportunity for the Ravens just taking massive step and pass attempts, throw the football down the field, and I'm all for it. I think they're going to be a great team, and you'll see it like through the fantasy takes that we talk about later about Lamar Jackson, someone that I cannot stop drafting in fantasy. He's just, if he can really take that next step as a passer, along with his rushing upside, it's just QB1 overall by a wide range of outcome, by a wide margin, is what we could be looking at.
That's interesting.
That's underrated passer is always how I felt.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it here. I want to bring back the Todd Monken coming in at offensive coordinator, right? We know what he does. We know that his MO is kind of pass happy. So how do you view, I guess, him coming in? Where do you see Lamar going in pass attempts, I suppose? Like how big of a jump do you see that coming up? And do you see him running less with Todd Monken there?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, Todd Monken, you don't really see this. Like, I'm trying to look at splits of his offense where it was like, did quarterbacks not run at all in this offense or anything like that? There wasn't really anything you could really work with. Like, there weren't any tons of running quarterbacks. Like, he just didn't really have those guys. So it's hard to judge him based on that. So I feel like Lamar's gonna be Lamar, and maybe he takes a decrease slightly if he's passing a bit more, but Lamar's still going to run for 700 plus yards this year. I feel like that's a very easy lock it in, possibly up to like 900, 1,000 yards. I think you can lock that in. Lamar's going to be Lamar, and that's just part of his game that is just on a different level. He's arguably the best rushing quarterback in the NFL today and already one of the better ones we've seen of all time. And he's going to run the football. But this offense, I think like they've been like bottom 5 in pass attempts most years. I mean, in 2021, though, they had a really interesting season where they passed the ball 600 plus times because they lost all their running backs. That was the year where J.K. Dobbins got hurt, Gus Edwards got hurt, Justice Hill got hurt. They all missed the entire season, and they ended up passing 600 plus times. And Marquise Brown had 1,000 yards in that year. Mark Andrews 13 plus 100 yards in that year. And Lamar Jackson was a really solid passer, but he got injured a part of that season. He just wasn't a pure fantasy stud like we wanted him to be in 2021. So we've got a taste of a pass-heavy Lamar offense, and when he was in the field healthy, it was really, really good for fantasy football. But for this year, I think we're going to see more around that range where they're like, I think around like the 10 to 15 range in terms of pass attempts. I think they're going to be above average when they've been like below average, kind of nearing dead last. I think this Todd Monken's going to take a complete turnaround this year. And also, like when you look at their when you look at their offense in terms of the running game, like they do have J.K. Dobbins, and he's fantastic. He's great. But outside of that, it's a little bit concerning. I personally like Gus Edwards, but with the injury of the ACL, it's been really concerning with him lately. He just hasn't shown anything lately. And then outside of that, it's just nothing. I know they signed Melvin Gordon, but Melvin Gordon was released by the Broncos after not seeing many touches for a while. And then he was in the Chiefs practice squad with Isaiah Pacheco and Jarrett McKinnon as his only competition. Like, this dude is not going to make an impact on this team at all. I'm not concerned about Melvin Gordon for J.K. Dobbins at all.
Yeah,
but
that was a funny signing.
It was really interesting. But this team has a lot of room to pass the ball, especially with the new receivers they have. So I'm expecting like a top 15 type of pass temp, like a top 15 in pass attempts per game kind of season for them.
And like you hit on it, 700. If Lamar was to literally only get you 700 yards in rushing, we say only because he has been on pace or has hit 1,000 in the past 3 years. I'm pretty sure he was on. I think it was 750 the past 2 years where he missed 4 games. Or 5 or 6, I think was last year. But regardless, 700 is so huge for fantasy when you're talking about your quarterback. And like, we are coming to a point where we're starting to get spoiled at what rushing yards look like. I mean, you got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. But honestly, if Lamar said, I'm going to only run for 700 and now I can throw for 37 to 4,000, I'd be pumped. I mean, that's a huge season, like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, also another thing I do want to mention and bring up real quick. I mean, the Ravens, here's the thing. I feel like not a lot of people like to talk about this. The Ravens did just sign him to a massive contract. Like,
huge.
Massive contract.
I mean, protect him.
I mean, he was the highest paid quarterback of all time in terms of money per year, but he just got beat out by
Justin
Herbert.
Yeah,
he just got beat out by him. But the thing is with Lamar, like when you pay a quarterback that much money, I feel like the Ravens want to see what they actually have and unlock him. Because they haven't been able, they've been a one-dimensional offense in each of the past like 3-4 years. They just haven't been able to get that pass game going besides the 2019 season. Like, why not try to up the pass attempts, unleash Lamar, and try to make him what you are paying him to be, which is the true like QB1 of the NFL. Why not try to unlock that? And I think that's what they've done with bringing in receivers, all the hype in the camp, among not just among beat reporters, but among players in interviews, coaching staff, saying, oh yeah, we're going to pass more. Where this is going to be a pass-heavy team.
Yeah, it's all
I think that's all we've heard all offseason long. And I know offseason stuff is kind of hard to trust. You got to take it with a grain of salt. But with the fact that the players are saying it as well, it's really tough to just throw it aside. Like, this team is going to pass more this year. And I think they're going to try to unlock Lamar as that true QB1, where he's just going to do both.
Yeah, for sure, man. And we kind of hit on it a little bit with the running game, kind of pivoting off of Lamar Jackson. You hit on J.K. Dobbins, that he's kind of the lead back there. We know he's been dealing with some injuries. He had that ACL 2 seasons ago, never fully got back healthy last season. He missed, he played 4 of the first 6 games, and he missed about half the season, came back, looked really good, but he was not involved in the pass game.
There was one run where he looked like he was running on one leg. He was not healthy.
He just didn't look healthy all season. Now he's put on the pup. Now he's put on the pup list to start training camp, which is a little concerning. How do you see this backfield unfolding? Do you think JK is going to be unleashed here? Where, I mean, I have high expectations for him. I have him in my top 15 because I think he is a very, very good running back as long as he can stay on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I look at him, I don't want to say poor man's because he's a really, really good player, but he's kind of like a poor man's Nick Chubb to me. He's just super, super hyper effective on the ground. But he's
great comparison. I like it.
I mean, like, it really is. Like, he's super effective. He's
super efficient. Yeah.
In terms of yards after contact and breaking tackles, like, this dude is just off the marks. Like,
runs low,
runs really well. The only weakness is that he cannot pass catch at an elite level. Like, he did all right in college. I mean, putting up like just under 30 receptions in almost every season in his college career at Ohio State, correct? Yes,
yes, sir.
Yes, I'm saying Ohio State, correct. I don't remember the colleges that players went to very often. I usually get
we're very familiar here. We
are some OSU alums.
Ohio guys. But that's the only thing that concerns me for fantasy football, because when you look at the guys that are top of fantasy football, like over the past 5 years, when you look over the past 5 years of fantasy football, right, 70% of the running backs who got in the top 10, they saw at least 50 targets in their offense. Like the guys who are getting in the top 10 in fantasy are the guys who are usually catching passes. It's the only reason. So here, there are three things I got for J.K. Dobbins this year. One, like, he could be hyper efficient on the ground. I mean, look at the end of the season for him last year. Hyper efficient, and even his rookie year, hyper efficient, like insanely efficient. It's like basically unsustainably efficient.
6
Still was
yards per
okay
carry.
for fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay, not great. Okay, because he doesn't catch passes. So if he doesn't start catching passes, the thing that's going to carry him in fantasy is touchdowns. He's going to have to get a unrealistic amount of touchdowns this year. And if he can get there, sure. If he has a high touchdown rate kind of season, sure, he can get there. And this offense, it's very plausible. So he could sneak into the top 10 that way, kind of how Mark Ingram did in 2019, where he snuck in the end zone so many times and just dominated. Like, I could see that kind of season for J.K. Dobbins this year. But if he doesn't get the pass catching work and he doesn't get those touchdowns, you're going to be left pretty disappointed. Like, if you're expecting a top 15 finish, that's not going to happen. He's going to have to get passing work, or he's going to have to get lucky with touchdowns. That's it. If he doesn't get lucky with touchdowns, doesn't get passing work, you're not going to see top 15.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough without. And I think actually I have him ranked top 15 currently. This is all being changed as we speak because of the injury, the contract issues. It's all making me a little bit nervous. But the reason I have put him in top 15 because we look, and I'll drop a stat for you, and it's a very unfair stat. Nick Chubb. The year that Monken was the OC in the Browns, for the Browns, Nick Chubb saw 33 targets in 8 games. I think he saw 50 in the total season. The 33 came when Kareem Hunt was hurt. So it's hard to distinguish because is this because Kareem Hunt was hurt? Is this because Monken makes a point to say, hey, Lamar, you need to check down instead of running, let's check down. It's just tough because he's a rushing QB. So you really never know.
Because who did he have in Cleveland those years? I don't think those guys were running quarterbacks.
Baker.
Baker.
No, yeah.
That's
so
the problem with that.
I know. And it all goes to exactly what you're saying. How is this offense going to progress? It's not going to be some huge shift right off of year one, but are we going to see it where they are going to get him to start doing that? And is it even going to be enough to bump JK's targets up? It's all, I agree with you. It's not going to be enough. You just hope to start seeing that, right? Like for him as a running back. There's, curious about the receivers. So we have OBJ, we have Zay Flowers, we have Rashad Bateman, even Duvernay. Are there any of these guys that interest you in fantasy? Because I spoke about these guys a little bit last night. I think Bateman and Zay are going 45, 46. I'm pretty sure ADP. Wide receiver. Yeah.
See, the thing is, I think like for me, it's not OBJ. That's the one thing I will say. It's just not OBJ.
That's how I feel.
I know he's the cheapest one, and people are like, oh, just draft the cheapest one. It's not worth it with OBJ. I mean, this dude is a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver, hasn't played football in a couple of years off ACL injuries. It's just been riddled the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Like, it's just been brutal for him. Like, he's just not a player that I want to invest in at all, and it's just not worth the investment, even at his cheap cost. I'm just not in. If you're going to invest one in Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman, personally, I'm going with Flowers. I mean, I don't love him as a talent. I don't think he's the most ridiculous talent. I mean, I have him ranked as my wide receiver 4 coming in this class, like right behind QJ, Addison, and of course in his own tier, Jack Smith-Njigba. Like I thought he was fine. I thought he was a solid player, but the opportunity here is really, really large. I mean, he's a first-round pick. The Ravens clearly have a massive investment in him. Like the latest investment, the heaviest investment was with Zay Flowers. I'm going to bet on the investment that the Ravens are showing, and that's Zay Flowers all day. So. And they're both going really late, so I will take some dart throws at each of them. But I personally am really excited for Zay Flowers, and all the hype has been about Zay Flowers in the offseason. He's been looking really good, according to most camp reports.
No, you're 100% correct.
Speed.
Speed
demon.
Speed is insane.
A lot of talk.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of talk coming out of camp that Zay looks really good. Funny enough that you bring up Odell, because I'm right there with you in that camp that I will not touch him this season. Yeah, I think he came out in an interview saying that this is going to be his last season.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah.
No way.
So when
that's news to me.
He said, he said this year's gonna be his last year. He's gonna put it out all on the table, but this will be his last year.
And when you hear a player bring that up,
he's doing a retirement tour this season, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's quarterback like.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One thing I will bring up though, like, you know, like it's a similar feeling of how I feel with the Chiefs wide receiver room. Like, we could argue all day about who it's going to be. What if the answer is none of them? Like, what if it's just a carousel of wide receivers all over again, like the Chiefs were last year, like the Ravens been over?
Yeah, what if
over
it's
the past
just
couple
Mark
years?
Andrews?
It could be a carousel where sometimes Bateman goes off, sometimes OBJ
Yeah.
gets a few targets, sometimes Flowers is a good game. He has inconsistencies as a rookie. And what if the only real answer is Mark Andrews? Like, that could be the answer,
Yeah.
even though we see an increase in pass attempts. There doesn't have to be one that actually emerges of these three wide receivers. It could just be all of them have okay seasons. And that would be devastating for fantasy, because that would just, like, you would hate to start any of those players because there's a chance that they get like 3 targets in a game.
Yeah.
So just know that there's no guarantee that one of these guys steps up at all.
Such an interesting take. And I feel like we see so much on Twitter and so much in social media about fantasy football, especially when we're doing this. And I don't know if I've heard anybody just make that case. Like, what if this is the Kansas City Chiefs? And I think that's a great viewpoint. Like, it very well could be. Mark Andrews is the most dominant pass catcher on this offense. Why not? Right? Like, makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because if none of them are truly talented enough to take that jump up, like, they're not going to. When in an offense, targets are earned, and if you really don't earn that target share, you're not going to get it. Like, that's just it. So if none of these guys are worthy of it, they're not going to get it.
Yeah, and bringing up Mark Andrews, we also saw what Isaiah Likely could do on his own last season. He had some awesome. I mean, he had a couple top 5 finishes last year. He looked really good when he was the man there. We know they're going to be passing a lot more. You just kind of spoke on what you think of this wide receiver room, where I'm with you. I don't know if anyone's really that talented or can stay healthy. I mean, we see how often Bateman gets hurt, Odell Beckham gets hurt, Zay Flowers he's a smaller wide receiver, so we don't know what's going to transpire over the season. We touched on Mark Andrews. We all think he's going to be a stud. Can Isaiah Likely kind of emerge as a top pass catching option in this offense?
How about a fantasy relevant player? I think.
Yes, a fantasy relevant player. Asking. Yeah, I mean, it's really intriguing because Isaiah Likely in the games that Mark Andrews missed was really, really good player, and he showed a lot of flashes as a rookie. I just find it really difficult for him to step up with the wide receivers around. I think it would take a Mark Andrews injury to make him like a supremely relevant asset. Like, it's just really tough for me. I just don't see Likely stepping up without an injury. It's not that I don't like him as a talent. It's not that I think he's horrible, but I just think that if any of these guys are going to get a real boost in targets, it's going to be a first-round pick in Zay Flowers, or their second-round pick in Rashad Bateman, or a $15 million man in OBJ. Like, if any of these 4 outside of Mark Andrews are going to get targets, I don't think it'll be Likely. I don't think it's likely that it'll be Likely. Like, it just doesn't add up for me. I personally would have to think that Mark Andrews have to get hurt for Likely.
Likely not likely.
No disrespect to him as a player. He's a good player.
Yeah, he's great.
For sure.
Did you have any guys that you're planting the flag for this season? Like, who is your dude that you have ended up with in the most drafts, or that you're super excited for?
I mean, I laid out a case for Lamar earlier. I did.
All of football. Sorry,
not all just of fantasy football. Oh man,
all of fantasy football.
Give us your hot, who's your guy?
We're opening it up.
Who is my guy, man? Well, that's really tough. There's definitely a handful of. I don't know if I saw this preparing for the show, but man, a few guys that are coming to my mind. I think one that I'll shout out right away. I think it's Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, Luke Sawhook, the guy up co-host Hooked on Fantasy with, always calls me the Jahmyr Gibbs guy. Every time he opens Twitter, he sees me hyping up Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's really true. I am very much a Jahmyr Gibbs guy. He's my RB3 in Dynasty currently. I'm in my rankings. I am all in on Jahmyr Gibbs for this year. He's a top 10 running back for me right now in redraft. I couldn't be more in. He is set up with a non-mobile veteran quarterback in Jared Goff, who loves to use pass running backs, an offense with Dan Campbell, who loves to use running backs. He's just set up for so much success. And I honestly, if he caught like 85, 90 passes this year, I'd be like, yeah. Like, I wouldn't be crazy shocked. I see as a realistic outcome for him.
I'm with him.
It's an offense that has openings for a playmaker, a pass catcher.
They just traded for Denzel Mims. That's how desperate they are right now. They just traded for him because they got like a bunch of guys suspended with Jameson Williams and a few others they had to cut. Like, they have nobody outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
He's hurt now. Jameson Williams is hurt.
Yeah, then we don't know what's happening with Williams.
Yeah.
We don't know who he is. Like, I mean, he was a first-round pick, but we don't know if he's great. We haven't seen it yet. So outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're desperate. So Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get a boatload of targets. Very, very excited for him. But that would probably be my guy in the fantasy football world.
Love it. This was awesome, man. We truly appreciate you getting off of work and hopping on here with us. Before we let you go, if you want to let the people know where to find you and what you have going on, obviously we got your Twitter tag. You could plug it again, wherever we could find you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys so much for having me on the show. It was really nice. But you guys can follow me if you are interested in my content. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF. I create with DLF with football guys. I'm the co-host of Hooked on Fantasy, and as shouted out by these two guys, the Two Idiots podcast as well. If you're in a comedy, me and my school friend Grayson do that. And I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/ClutchHutch. If you're interested in that, you can check that out. But yeah, I'm really just a teenager trying to make his way in the fantasy football space. I've been doing this for couple of years now, and I've had a lot of fun, and I'm not leaving for nothing. Like this is gonna be something I'm doing. This is something I'm hoping to do for a long time. So yeah, any support would be greatly appreciated on the but the journey's been amazing so far. But any love, any support, greatly appreciated. But thank you guys so much for having me on the show. It was lovely.
Oh, thank you. Yes, go check him out at HutchinsonB_FF. Thank you so much, man.
You're the man. We appreciate it, brother. Next up, we have Patrick Pucci joining us, one of my favorite Twitter personalities. He's a ton of fun on there. If you guys don't follow him, go follow him at Patrick Pucci 22. That's PatrickPucci 22. And he is a massive Pittsburgh Steelers fan. As a Browns fan, it's tough, but I still love him.
Hard to believe Browns and Steelers exist, right?
I know, right? Still going. It's still there a little bit, even though the Browns haven't been up to snuff lately. But Patrick, we're going to get into some Steeler talk. Some key departures from you. Actually, you guys really don't have any key departures on the offensive side of the ball. But you did bring in Allen Robinson, a few free agent offensive linemen. You drafted a top 15, Broderick Jones left tackle, and then you brought in Darnell Washington, which was a massive steal in my opinion.
Definitely. They're going to be on the field a lot together.
I think so,
Georgia too, you know?
The Georgia boys. That was a great pickup by you. I mean, he's one of my favorite steals of the draft because I mean, we know the injury concerns, but it was a massive haul for you guys, in my opinion. So let me get your gut feeling on what the Steelers are going to be like this season. How do you view them? Where do you think they're going? I mean, they still have the same offense coordinator that I'm sure you guys aren't too happy about, but what do you view? What's your outlook on them for the 2023 season?
I think we're making the playoffs. That's I'm a Steelers fan now, so you know that. I love it. In fantasy, though, I mean, even fantasy wise and all too. I mean, I love the Browns, believe it or not. Scott Fish, I got a couple Browns on my team. I got Watson, I got Cooper, and if you're gonna do fantasy, you better know how to play it, right?
That's right. I love it.
I think Browns and Steelers kind of both make playoffs. I don't know. It could be 3 from this division.
It could be. It's one of the rare. I mean. There's a lot of talk that this is one of the premier divisions in the league, which is, it's tough for both teams. But you guys have Mike Tomlinson. He has never had a losing record, so it's hard to discount them. I mean, everyone's kind of saying they're due to fall off, but until it happens, how can you discount them?
Right. I actually think Baltimore's going to be a team in last this year. I heard Dr. Morrison. He's worried about Lamar Jackson's injury. You don't think they treated it right?
But let's roll this into. You brought him up. I want to talk about some of the QB play here with the Steelers. Let's get into Kenny Pickett. Coming into his second season, he had it wasn't the greatest rookie season, but he looked adequate. He had a lot of come from behind, victories. He was good towards the back half of the season. What do you view him for this season? Do you think he's going to take a big step forward? And what's your expectations for this pass game?
Yeah, I think he's going to step forward big time. I could see him being a top 12 quarterback. I mean, that's a little bit of a reach, but they're going to throw a lot more. I keep telling people, the defense is where we're hurting on the back end. Rookie guys and new players, it's not easy to adjust with that. I love Joey Porter Jr., but they're going to pick on him right now.
Yeah, he's a young guy. Like you said, your secondary is a little thin coming into the season. Right. So like you said, if the defense is struggling a little bit, it makes sense that we're going to see a lot more throwing than what we did last season with Kenny Pickett. You guys have a couple, in my mind, really good pass catching options. I mean, you got Deontay Johnson, who continuously gets over 130 targets a season. George Pickens, who had a really nice back half of his rookie season, and Pat Freiermuth. These are the big three weapons for this team. Let's start with Pickens. Our buddy Cody, right before the podcast, he let us know that he was top 26 in PPR weeks 10 through 18 last season. What's your expectations for Pickens? Do you think he's going to take that big jump? And who do you think is the alpha? Who do you think is the alpha receiver in this room?
I still think it's Johnson, but it's close. You know what I mean? I think Pickens getting 1,000 yards this year. I think the two of them can easy. You know what I mean? And then he's getting the number 2 corner every week, right? I mean, that already makes it easy. Then you got Allen Robinson's now going to get the number 3 corner. Are you kidding me?
Let's roll into that. Let's roll into this running back room. So you got Najee Harris. He's kind of a big divide of the fantasy football community right now. It's either you really love him or you hate him. Like he's either in your top 12 or he's in your back half of RB2.
Right.
So like you said, he was coming off that list, Frank, last year. There was a lot. We know now that he was playing with a metal piece in his foot for the first 6 weeks of the season. Then he comes back. He has a really nice back half of last year as well. The whole team honestly kind of gelled that weeks 10 through 18, those last 8 games, they really kind of turned on the offense at least. Where do you see him finishing this season fantasy?
I think he's still top 10, don't you? I mean, if you play through injury like that, I mean, most players would have bailed out, took off some games or called it a season. He didn't miss a game.
Do you see? I guess the big question is because Jaylen Warren was very efficient when he got the work last year. Do you see this offense continuing to give Najee Harris those massive volume seasons that his first 2 seasons of his career he had over 300 rushing attempts in both years?
I think it's still going to be there. Tomlin likes to have a workhorse back. There's not too many coaches that do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's one of the few guys that when he has his back, he just gives it to him. Doesn't stop. So do you think Jaylen Warren's going to get any run, or is it just going to be straight Najee?
I think Warren still does like what he did last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Similar kind of back.
Exactly. Tomlin's a big practice guy. And if you watch, Najee's practicing like a fool. I mean, like crazy. Look at him working out. Go look at some of his videos and stuff, And if you're practicing well, you're playing well. That's why I think they got rid of Claypool. He was at practice. He didn't show up. He's worried about TikToking. He's worried about, I'm not getting the ball enough. It's not that his talent wasn't there. If Tomlin don't like you practicing, you're gone.
No, you know that better than most because you're in the thick of it in the Pittsburgh,
kind of like you
Twitterverse,
right?
And just like I am in Cleveland. I know every little rumor that's swirling around. I want to touch on Pat Freiermuth because he's one of my favorite players to target this season. I thought he looked awesome last year. How do you see this pass game incorporating him? Do you think he's going to be heavily targeted, or is he going to be kind of the third fiddle to Deontay and George Pickens?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's still going to get plenty of ball. All the attention's going on Pickens and Deontay Johnson. So who's covering him right now? You're going to put a safety on him?
Yeah.
I think he was a rookie last year, and look what he did.
Yeah. That's why I'm super high on him. Because we all know, rookie tight ends coming in.
Yeah.
They don't usually put up those kind of numbers. And, again, if Freiermuth finds 6 touchdowns, he's a top 12. He's a top 12 tight end, and he's looking really good coming into this season.
I totally agree. And Heath Miller wasn't as good in his first year as a rookie. That Steelers don't really have good tight ends. It's probably one of the better ones they've had ever.
Heath was a Browns killer, so I know plenty of Heath, unfortunately. I also want to touch on Deontay a little bit. So, you saw all the games last season. What really, I guess, went wrong for his fantasy outlook? I know he only had 2 touchdowns last year.
I don't even know if he caught a touchdown. Did he?
Okay. So he might not.
Little fluky. It was I think it's fluke. You can't judge. Touchdowns are just, especially if they had a bad year. I think you jump on board on that.
Yeah. So so you're in on him at the discount of what's going on.
He's getting 100 targets, right?
At least
something easy, right?
At least, I mean, he's upwards. He gets upwards 130, 140 every
But I
season.
mean, it's not like he's an old man. It's not going away. Yeah,
he's a volume monster, and I'm right there with you at the ADP that he's going. So for me, I'm just going to kind of throw this at you. We all know that last season wasn't the greatest season for the Steelers offensive wise, right? So
right.
You can find some of these. I don't know how great. I don't see any top 5 finishes from these guys. But maybe Najee. He's the only one I can see that being kind of a realistic outcome. Yeah, but where these guys are going with their ADPs, I think that it's just massively discounted because of how bad they were last year, and a lot of it was kind of fluky, like you're saying with Deontay. And
Yes.
I'm with you, man. I think there's a lot of very good value in this team, and it hurts me to say it as a Browns fan, but I think I'm going to have a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers on my teams.
Well, I got a lot of Browns on my team, so you know how that works. So and look at this. I mean, you got the Browns, the Bengals, you got the Ravens. I mean, this division's never been so stacked. Yeah, who's the worst team? I mean, really?
That's a great point. That's a great point that I don't think a lot of people really, are talking about. You kind of touched on it with the defense in Pittsburgh, where you don't think they're going to be that much. But let's be honest, all 4 of these offenses are going to be high powered, and if that's the fact, I mean, there's going to be a lot of offensive weapons in this division that should be very fantasy relevant
every week, and they got to play each other twice. I mean, I don't see anybody's defense standing out. Probably Cleveland's got the best defense right now.
I mean,
I would say, right?
I hope so. For my sake, I hope so. I'm sick of these defenses that give up 250 yards on the ground. So we'll see.
I like Peterson. He's a little old, but I mean, he'll do his own, But we're gonna have a rookie out there on corner. What's the other corners we got? So we're sitting there with where did I put that?
You got Joey Porter.
Yeah, Joey Porter Jr. I mean,
rookie coming up.
I like him a lot, but I mean, rookies, I don't see him lighting up right.
It's tough.
It's tough. They're going to get
tough
done, Levi Wallace is going to be the starter out there on the other end. I mean, he's good,
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, man. I get it. All 4 defenses are going to have struggles in this division. I don't see any way around it. So we touched on kind of the big guys on your team. Do you see any are there any other Steelers that you want us to keep an eye on as a fantasy football community?
Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of wave on Calvin Austin a little. I heard that who was it when Sauce Gardner played against him in college? He said he had trouble guarding him. I guess he's pretty quick. But
he was one of my favorites. He was one of my favorites coming out of last year.
I didn't know too much about him in college, but I mean he's pretty quick.
Yeah, he's lightning. If he gets it in open space, look out, man.
I like they're going to run him a lot. That's what Najee. What did Najee say? Najee said they're looking to give him the ball a lot in the run plays. A lot of sweeps and stuff. So especially with Broderick in there, they said to watch out when Broderick's in there and he's in there. There's going to be a lot of sweeps.
Okay. So. That's great. Hey, that's a great insight because those are the kind of things that I like to hear and keep an eye on. I mean, Calvin is somebody that you don't, no one's really thinking about him.
Nobody's going to draft him. Right?
He's kind of left. And that's one of those players where when I say, hey, give us a couple guys to keep an eye out for, that's what I'm looking for because no one's going to draft him. He's going to be sitting on your waivers. Yep. He's one of those guys you keep an eye on their stats, how much is he on the field? How much run is he getting in the first couple weeks? And then, if you see some good numbers, you can stash him and hopefully he pops at the back half of the season.
Definitely. And if you're on a dynasty league, you maybe could stash him on your bench or your what's that called?
On the taxi?
Yeah, the tag team. Right.
Hey, I had him on one of my teams last
year. So you know what I'm talking about.
I do. He was one of I liked him coming out.
And nobody's thinking about him, right?
I agree. I like that one. I like that call a lot. So the one question I ask everybody before we let them go, do you have any plant the flag kind of players for this season of any team? It doesn't have to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, who are your fantasy players that you want to go out and try to get in every draft?
I'll give you 2. And one's Justin Fields, no matter what. I think he's just going to have a monster year. And the other one you're going to love a lot, and I think it's Nick Chubb. I'm going to say Nick Chubb is number 1 overall back.
You heard it here first from a Pittsburgh fan.
I'm a Steeler fan.
I love it.
I got him in the 3rd round of Scott Fish.
Did you? That's a steal. Oh, my goodness.
Right? I got Watson, Cooper, and and I got him.
And Nick Chubb.
And everybody's laughing.
hey.
They're like, I thought you were a Steeler fan. I'm like, you can't play with your heart when you're playing fantasy.
Yeah, you got to take the deals when they come your way, man. And Nick Chubb, I'm with you because I think he's going to be.
With Hunt gone, it's on. Right?
With Hunt gone, it's on. I like that a lot.
There you go. You could use that one.
I'm going to. Don't you worry. Patrick, man, this was a ton of fun, and we really appreciate you coming on and helping us out with this. Before we let you go, let the viewers know kind of where they can find you and if you have anything coming up for the fantasy football season.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm with the sports affiliation. You know, me and my guys over there appreciate it. You know, sportsaffiliation.com or not.com at the sports affiliation. And, yeah, we do a lot of Twitter space and stuff, and it'd be great if anybody could join us. And like I said, Dad Bod, you want to come on one night? Come on and join us.
Hey, we'll be there. I'll make sure of it. Everyone listening, go follow him on Twitter at Patrick Pucci 22. Go follow the affiliation, and we will get you out of here, Patrick. We appreciate you stopping by, buddy.
Thanks a lot. Have a great night. Bye.
Thank you for watching our episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
If you aren't already following us on Twitter, check us out at DadBodFS.
We'll be posting all of our best clips and videos to all of our social media: TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on there at Dad Bod Fantasy Squad.
Lastly, if you'd rather just listen, we make sure we post our audio of each episode on all the major streaming platforms. Stick with us all season long so together we can count our trophies and not our calories.